This is the podcast overview for week 7, where we will be covering chapter 6, personality and stress. So I've put your to-do list here for the week. We'll go through this. Here are your objectives for the chapter. So again, you can listen to the podcast overview of this by clicking here, and I go over each of these and talk about some different elements of each and why they're important, kind of key things to know. Here are your lecture slides for chapter 6. And then I've also included a couple videos for this week. Some of you may have a background in personality psych if you've taken that class. Maybe got a tiny bit of it in intro psych, but in general, I'm guessing not everybody has had a ton of exposure to personality psych. And so in your textbook for this chapter, that's what it's all about, is how our personality affects how we respond when we're stressed out, and ultimately how it affects our health. So it's good to understand personality a little bit more. So you're going to get a lot of that in this chapter, but I thought I'd put a couple videos to help you understand two key areas that there's a good deal of time spent on these in the book. And the first is on the big 5 personality traits. It often goes by the acronym OCEAN, which just stands for openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, the opposite would be introversion, agreeableness, and then neuroticism versus stability. So, these are kind of spectrum traits where you fall on one end or the other or somewhere in between on each dimension. So each trait is a dimension. And so this video explains it really nicely. If you haven't been introduced to the Big 5 yet, it'll be helpful to watch this video. And then I have another video on type A personality, spends a good deal of time talking about that. Also type B personality, and a little bit about type D, which is mentioned in your book. It talks about type T, but the research there is not super conclusive. So it's not even mentioned in your textbook. You're not responsible for that part, although it's interesting. The research is still kind of, out on conclusions there, but it's just a great video that illustrates how type A affects your behavior, and then ultimately how it affects health and health decision making. So two quick videos for you to watch this week. And then you have your discussion, which is going to follow along with the Harrington chapter. And you don't have any reading for the McGonigal book, The Upside of Stress, this week. So it's just based on chapter 6. And the first question is, why do you think studies have found gender differences in anger, hostility, or anxiety as risk factors for coronary heart disease? So we're going to speak a little bit to those gender differences and why those exist. So explain that. And then next, which personality factors do you believe leave you more vulnerable to stress? How do they leave you vulnerable? What healthy strategies can you employ to counteract your personality vulnerabilities? Okay, so this is kind of you looking in and going, okay, what personality traits do I carry with me that might lead me to be more vulnerable to stress? So I think that'll be a good insight exercise. But there is an actual insight exercise on page 203 of your book. So the next question deals with that, and it has to do with locus of control. So you're going to determine what your locus of control is, whether it's internal or external, and what that all means. So what does that mean about you once you find out what you are? What does that say about you? And then why do you think perceptions of control are related to stress and health outcomes? And which theory presented in the text, in the chapter, includes perceptions of control as your favorite? So The chapter presents a couple different theories about why control is important. And again, they're all theories. And so your job is to say which one do you kind of tend to agree with the most. And then lastly, if someone asks you how personality relates to health and longevity, what would you say? So after reading the chapter and gaining an understanding of how all of these different elements of personality play a role in our health, how would you answer that question? And what do you consider to be the 3 most important findings in this area of research dealing with personality and stress? So that sums it up. That is your week in view. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email. Welcome to set up a time to Zoom if you need further clarification on any concepts.